All right, let's get started. Thanks everyone for joining us. For the last OpenZFS leadership meeting before the Developer Summit, where I hope to see many of you 3 weeks from yesterday. If you have not already registered, you should really do that very soon. We are almost at capacity. So register today and we'll see you in 3 weeks. We have a few items on the agenda, and we may have time for additional agenda items at the end if folks have other stuff they'd like to discuss. So let's start off with zpool ddtload. I put this on the agenda just to let folks know that this was a new subcommand that was proposed by Will Andrews. I don't see him on here.
I don't think he is, but I can explain.
Yeah, sure, go ahead and explain what it is, just so folks can be aware of that.
So one of our customers is using dedupe extensively and has a very large DDT table on the order of 100 and some odd gigs. And they found that after a reboot for the first couple of days, write performance was really bad because it had to do random reads from the DDT. So we created a subcommand to basically initiate prefetches on all the zap entries in the DDT. We're looking at how to extend it so that we can hook it up to the zpool wait command or make it synchronous or something so that it'll be clearer when it's finished. But the idea is to basically just purposely fault all of the DDT into the arc.
May I ask one question about, is it after zpool import?
Yes.
You can see this issue. Can you try export and import it again without reboot? Do you have this issue?
Same, yes, because it would, when you export it, it would clear everything out of the arc for that pool, right?
Yeah, and another one, can you try to test external? Do you have a boot zpool or it's additional one?
This is an additional one.
Additional based on local hard drives? Or based on some iSCSI or something else?
I think both local and remote disks.
And do you have log and cache devices?
They do not for this one, no.
And how big arc? How much RAM?
256 or 384 gigs.
Okay, and you can see issue with DDT loads.
Well, just when it's cold, it's really slow because it's having to do random reads all the time to get chunks of the DDT. And so by getting it all into the cache on demand,
okay,
when invoked, rather than as needed, it means that the write performance after that is better.
Thanks for explanation.
Yeah, it seems like a good idea to me. I'll look at the code. I may have some, implementation detail type comments.
Yeah, we're definitely looking at a way to be able to tell when it's finished, because right now it's all ZIO no wait.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice in general if you could monitor it. Yeah. Like in zpool status, have it tell you like, oh, like we're prefetching the DDT. We're 20% done and whatever.
Exactly. And then with that, be able to hook it up to the zpool wait thing as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, admittedly, that's probably like a whole bunch more work than what you've already done. But it would be nice, especially since like, otherwise it could be hard to understand why the performance is bad while this is going on,
Yep.
So my only thought about it was, shut up, Siri. So my only thought was, why not make this a pool property and have it automatically preload the DDT? I can think of justifications either way, but I'm curious.
Every time, but maybe, yeah, it could be something you would set as a temporary property during import even. But I think originally because the idea was that it would be synchronous, so the command would return once it was done, and so it made sense to do it that way. They didn't want to, because you might not want to do it every time. If you're just trying to do a quick import to read one file, then you don't want to do it. But if you're about to do, another couple terabytes of writes to the pool, then you do want to do it.
Yeah, I think doing it as a subcommand is the right way, and then like optionally, if we want to have some convenience of automatically running this every time you do an import, then yeah, maybe we could add that as like a property that would basically kick off a subcommand when you load the pool the first time. Cool. Any more?
Another additional question: how big your pool? Do you have a stripes of ready or single ready or several mirror drives in your pool?
It's not my pool, so I'm not entirely sure exactly what the layout for that one is.
Okay. Do you have?
It's a very large pool.
Very large, and do you have stripes of ready in this pool or stripes of mirrors?
I think it's stripes of individual disks because it's backed by a SAN or something.
Stripes of individual disks, right?
Like stripes of stripes, basically. No redundancy.
Interesting. Thanks.
Cool. Any other questions or comments on the zpool ddtload command? Cool. The next topic that we had was if there is any updates on the xattr cross-platform compatibility stuff that Andrew Walker and others were looking at last week. I'm not sure if Andrew is on here, so this may be a quick topic, but does anybody have any status updates on that?
Hi, Gordon Ross here, first time. Hello, everyone. Just briefly, I'm trying to help Andrew out. I had a discussion with him today. We're not ready to float a proposal just yet, but are gathering information. If anyone knows good contact people for him on to ask about xattr on the various ZFS implementations, for example, the Apple one and the Windows one, one of the things we're trying to include is a survey of how various systems are doing this today. I think that's about all I have to offer or to ask today. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. On OS X and Windows, you should talk to Jorgen Lundman. He basically he's like the one-man porting machine for both of those. I think that he may have posted on the mailing list about that. He is not here because he's in Asia, so this time doesn't work for him, but he's usually on the 2 out of the 3 calls.
Great, thanks. I'm sure I can find his contact.
Cool. Anything else on xattrs? All right. There's Igor, I saw that you added a few questions onto here. I'm going to take 2 of them now. The other ones, you had 2 about integration process ideas about like branching, and I assume this is specific, that those questions were specific to ZFS on Linux / ZFS on FreeBSD using the ZOL repo. And I think those would probably be better addressed by Brian Bellendorf, who couldn't make it to this meeting.
I discussed it, and I have discussed some ideas, integration ideas with Brian. It is why I try to open this question for meetings. Sure. If it interests, I can explain briefly.
All right, yeah, that sounds good. Let's, I'll add those to the agenda. Let's do the other 2 first, just because they will probably be quicker. So well, let's see. I'll take this one first since this is, I know about this. So what's the status of the OpenZFS repo? It hasn't been synced with Illumos in a long time. I may as well let you guys know now. We are planning to retire that repo, the OpenZFS repo that's a clone of Illumos. We're planning to kind of reinstate an OpenZFS repo that will be, basically we're going to move the ZFS on Linux repo to OpenZFS, you know, acknowledge that that repo is used for not just Linux, but also for FreeBSD. So it won't have that repo won't be named ZFS on Linux anymore. It'll just be OpenZFS. So that will kind of take the place of the current Illumos-based OpenZFS repo. And obviously Illumos will continue to, you know, continue to use its own source code and its own Illumos GitHub account and processes.
Matt, may I ask you when you have time for new repo organization?
So the
what is the deadline or something else?
Yeah. So the existing repo, I think we'll get rid of that before the conference. So in the next few weeks, I just need to send out email to let everybody know. Moving over the ZFS on Linux repo into the OpenZFS will happen after that. We don't have any real deadline aside from kind of the schedule about making FreeBSD use that repo. So that kind of ties into your next question about status on that.
Yes.
Yeah, so we'd like to have that all ready kind of around the same time that the FreeBSD support lands in that repo, and you know we're actually doing continuous integration testing and whatnot. Hopefully we'll have a bunch more to say about that at the conference. We won't necessarily have the exact timeline because obviously that depends on like when work gets done. But hopefully we'll have some more details to share about that at the conference.
Thanks for update, and I just want to try to ask some FreeBSD guys because I have involved with to review of some changes because I have planned with dealers to use the same source tree, as you know, and I'm working with some, try to discuss some ideas with Brian, and Brian said try to work with FreeBSD guys by review and provide some feedback or something for updates, for next updates, what I can use and reuse for deals. But it's hard at this moment because try to split a one platform into two different platforms where we need try to check more. I try to wait when FreeBSD will be moved on with changes, and I will be available for review.
Cool. Well, I think it'd be really cool to see another another platform also using that repo, and I think the more that do, the better. And you know, the better we'll be able to keep that code cross-platform and improve the design of it. So that's good.
Yes, and additional testing on different platforms will be helpful. Try to find some issues. For example, threads are faster on the Illumos platform and a little slowly on Linux. Probably some issues can be available on Linux later, but we can try to find it on another platform very fast and try to check and fix it. Also, Illumos and dealers based on Illumos contain good tools like MDB, ddtload, where we can try to check what we need, try to fix on other platforms. It can help a lot with testing and debug.
Yeah, I totally agree. So let's move to the your next question about kind of, I think this is about status of FreeBSD using the ZOL repo. Could someone...
Question based on some probably feedback from FreeBSD guys, what percent are done or should be done with transition period, and what are issues they have and probably need some help. My question based on some status of porting to FreeBSD.
Yeah.
And what plans they have when try to finish it?
Yeah, I'm not sure who would be best to answer that. That's on the call. Alan or someone from IX Systems. I'm not sure if I recognize anybody's name here from IX.
Yeah, I don't really
I don't see anyone
know the
from
status of
X
it.
here.
I know that Matt Macy posted a bunch of stuff recently, and he was asking me about xattrs support and things, but I don't know what the status of it is.
Okay. Yeah, it would probably be best to hear from them in terms of like status and timeline. I mean, I see the code reviews and I see that a lot of progress is being made, but I don't really have a good handle on how much more progress there is to be made. But I do have a meeting with some of those folks tomorrow that I can try to get that information. Oh, there's a message on chat. Ryan says, the work is in progress is the best I can say. So
yes,
yeah.
Ryan have a good progress with Matt.
All right. So it sounds like we don't quite have the right people to give a detailed answer on that. I'll try to.
All I got is information from Matt Macy, which is he's got a particular set of things he's waiting to do, which include async COW. Along with getting the various things reviewed. I've been doing that intermittently as well for that. The implication was once that's done, the other part is then getting it actually into FreeBSD. And then the issues there have to do with replacing what's there and yet keeping the stuff for the boot code.
Cool. Well, I'll try to get some more detailed status from them tomorrow, and then I'll include that in the notes that I'll send out tomorrow or the next day.
Thanks.
But yeah, if anybody else wants to review some of the PRs, that would probably be helpful.
Yes, I've taken a look at a few of them, and it's definitely good to be aware of all those changes that are coming down, all the reorganization. Cool. So let's move on to the next topic. So Igor, do you want to talk about this proposal of like separate branch and then collecting changes?
Yes, it's one idea to have a master branch to be stable. What I mean, time to time we can see some issues where we try to push changes to master branch and can see some probably not good result with tests again, because for example, we are reviewing changes based on master with our own changes for one commit, for next commit, and several commits. And separately, there are all good. If you try to merge to one instance by changes to master, we can see some not good result, probably. Panic is a very bad result, but it's possible because we try to merge our changes on top. And my idea based on try to split this process to have a master as stable and move on, try to collect a commit on additional branch and produce some additional testing, automation testing, and merge on master only list of tested commits in not by one change set, but several changes. It can reduce some reverts on master branch. I'm using this process on deals about years, and it helps to reduce some inconsistency on master branch. And if we have a good results with tests, we do merge to master branch and tag a final build. And if we need try to check bad issues, we can try to find commits between tags and analyze it. We can reduce a list of changes what we need to analyze if we try to find some bad changes or some not good changes. It is like idea for discussion or something based on practice. Because time to time I try to find out panic or something else, what commit can be related to this panic, because I'm not testing every commit by long tests, because about 8 hours for one commit, it's
So
right.
If I could kind of let me try to summarize the problem you're trying to solve. The problem is that you want to be able to submit a pull request that's based on some commit or branch that has been more thoroughly tested, so that you, like the test failures that you're getting are more likely to be ones that you actually introduced and not ones that were recently introduced by other commits.
Yes, it's a problem if you can see issue with several PRs in one build. Every PR can produce a good build and good test results. But if you try to merge several PRs together, they can produce a panic or some not good result. And we can identify it by checks on separate additional branch and commit to master only tested list of PRs. Not every PR, but try to collect additional PRs on additional branch, probably weekly or bi-weekly, 2 weeks, and merge by one commit several PRs to master. It can provide some ability to have a stable master branch. It's like idea.
Yeah, it's. I think that maybe the typical name for that branch would be like a staging branch, in my experience.
Probably yes.
But yeah, well, I mean, personally, I'm not opposed to that idea, but it does introduce more work to manage it. So what do other folks think about this? Do other people have the same problem? I mean, I have definitely noticed this problem, in my own work, in my colleagues' work as well. So I definitely hear you that there's a problem there. Do other folks have similar experiences, or?
Probably I can see this issue because I do a lot of merge and integration work to my platform. It is why I can see this issue time to time.
All right,
It was just idea.
yeah, no, I mean, I think that it's, as I said, I've also noticed that problem, and the solution makes sense. I think that the goal has been that the master branch is always ready to test. It's ready to go, and there aren't any known failures, and that's a great goal. And we have not always achieved that. This is speaking specifically of the ZFS on Linux.
Probably, but time to time produce tags.
Yeah,
Can help identify a list of changes between tags, what can impact some stability.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's kind of a question of like, how much work do we want to put in to solve this problem? And I personally would not be putting in that work, but maybe Brian or other folks at Livermore might be interested in doing that. It sounded like you had some conversation with Brian. What was his? Do you want to kind of summarize his reaction or his take?
Okay.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll get some more input from him in the coming weeks.
One thing that I wanted to bring up is I think the challenge with the staging gate idea and is that you may be making changes to code that will have to merge with things that aren't in the staging gate. So any testing you do may not necessarily, be completely valid, because once you get ready to integrate, you're going to be having to deal with other changes that are in and potentially retesting and finding yourself in a situation where you're having to deal with, test failures that may or may not be yours.
It's try to reduce some issues between recheck of builds based on master branch and try to find out that you have a failed tests of failed build after commit of PR to master branch. It can reduce this issue.
Yeah, sure. I was just noting that it doesn't eliminate the problem completely. Yeah, definitely you can reduce it down.
Yeah, it
Thanks, George.
Yeah, it does to some degree kind of move the problem around, because you have, like you said, George, like if you have a bunch of outstanding changes that are all going to need to get merged together, somebody has to do that merge work. And if more of it falls onto the maintainer to do the merging from the...
Yes, I tried to find out that's probably my issue or some others who are working on integration, because we are using some Git cherry pick of some changes from master branch to our own branches. And we try to think about it's a stable, but time to time we can see that master branch can contain some issues. And at this moment, I try to wait about 1 week and take a look at time when master branch will be tested by some others to reduce my issues with merges.
Yeah. I think that we can definitely put in more effort to say tag certain commits, and then say every week we tag a commit, and then each of those will kind of get tested, and lots of people are running last week's build, and then maybe people who want more stability could wait to hear last week's build was a little rough, I'll wait for the next one, or I'll go back to the one from before that. I think
yes.
that something like that, that's sort of more lightweight, then actually having additional branches might might be easier to manage. But it's a question of like who's going to be running master versus like the weekly branches and giving feedback and whatnot. So
it is probably
this does not sound like a tenable problem, a way to approach the problem. We are too diverse. We are talking about too many different things. This is pretty much guaranteed to just bog down in misery and be forgotten about. I would suggest if we want to have the concept of semi-stable, this is a thing to discuss in person with a bunch of people at the Dev Summit since it's coming up so soon.
I have found additional example. We try to ask the developers try to rebase the latest master branch and try to test his changes before merge to master branch, and developer can see issues not related to his changes because they try to rebase to latest master and master can contain some issues.
Yeah, I mean,
I try to reduce this problem.
Yeah, it's definitely a problem. I think that the question is how much can we solve that problem with like creating additional branches, releases, etc. type of process versus how much should we address this problem by better pre-integration testing, better processes around like reverting changes that are bad more quickly and things like that. Because at the end of the day, like we're all trying to write software and we're all to not introduce bugs and to test our software thoroughly. And
I understand it.
can't solve all of those problems with process. You know what I mean? Some of them have to be solved with testing, and some of them are things that are not going to be solved with the amount of effort that we can, muster.
It is a topic for my question about CCD.
Yeah, well, I didn't quite understand this. So could you kind of talk a little bit more about what you mean here?
Yes, it's probably some planning because if you try to organize for platform owners, take a vision, we have plans for releases in ZFS code, it can help. For example, I won't release a deals as a platform, but I would like to know plans of ZFS releases. Try to prepare a next code drop, what I can use with my platform release. Is it partly will be integrated of current changes, or I can wait a little with additional ZFS changes, what can be included, and provide some platform update. It's an idea for probably CCD weekly, bi-weekly, where we try to collect a list of changes between platforms, and we can be in sync between platforms, what they try to resolve issues based on a list of issues on site. Probably some platforms try to resolve internal issues and can provide some additional information, or try to open additional issues on OpenZFS site, and we can be in sync with all other contributors or platforms. It's visibility.
Yeah. So are you talking about visibility into the like numbered releases, like what's coming next in 0.8.3? Is that kind of the question that you're looking at, or are you talking about the master branch?
It's a question about 0.8.3 or 1.0 ZFS release. What is status, or probably some changes which planned to be integrated from Delphix or other ZFS vendors. I'm interested in this situation as a platform owner.
Yeah. So kind of like you'd like to see the draft of the release notes before the release is made, so you could see like, okay, in 1.0, here are the things that we're expecting to have, like 1.0.
Yes, roadmap of ZFS code. What features or changes or something like should be included and will be included. It will be interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's actually, I think that's a good idea. You know, we'll have to talk to, you know, the folks at Livermore who are doing all of that release work for us right now, to convince them. But I think that if we approached it as something like, hey, let's have a draft of the release notes, and it can have, here's the things that are like, you know, we know are going to be in, and then here's like the next, this project we think is going to be in, and so you know, anybody who's wondering what's going to be in the next major release or the next minor release could check that and see, and from that kind of make a judgment of like, oh, well, they're waiting for this giant project, that's going to take a long time, so I'm not going to wait for the next release or whatever.
Yes, and this information on OpenZFS site will be interest for all users and companies who depend on it.
Yeah, I think that we definitely need to get better about communicating about branching and the release cycle, and what goes into the next releases. And this is something that I am interested in working on and making sure that it happens. So yeah, I'll work with Brian and other folks to try and, starting with the next major release at least, have a process that is more transparent and kind of communicates better what's going on without having to, like, you know, ask Brian every 3 weeks, what's happening with 0.8? Is it going to be released?
Yes.
Yeah, like I would like to avoid the need for that.
Thanks.
Yeah. Other questions or comments on that? Oh, so Christopher, I see you had you were talking about like the milestones on GitHub. Yeah, I think that the Brian in the past has been using these milestones and tagging to mark issues, but I think that has not been sufficient to really communicate what's going on. So I think that we need to either be more, we could definitely continue to use those milestone tagging and stuff, but we probably need to make sure that everybody knows what it means for things to have certain tags, and make sure that we're actually keeping those up to date and accurate.
Matt, I have some example about 082 tag where was using a smaller list of changes what was on master, because for this tag a list of commits was defined by Brian and you or some other people, and some FreeBSD changes with split of platform files not included. It is why I am interested in some process for planning where we can identify a list of changes based on open issues backtracker. What we plan to include to next code drop.
Yeah.
Thanks for understanding.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments on that? Okay, then the last topic on the agenda was about moving the time of this meeting earlier, which would be fine with me. So just to remind folks, we do like we have a pattern of 3 meetings. So we have 2 that are at the later time, which works well for folks or better for folks in Asia. And then we have one that's at this earlier time, that's this week, that's at an earlier time that's better for folks in Europe. So the request here is to move this early meeting, which is 1 out of 3 meetings, to be at an earlier time. That would be fine with me. I think I'm free either 1 or 2 hours earlier than this, so 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock Pacific time.
I think the 9 would be the preference here, is mostly that the current time lands at dinner time in, say, the UK and France, and is complicated for the, specifically I was trying to get the people working on the ZFS integration in Ubuntu to join the call.
Yeah, I think it'd be great.
It's an especially difficult time.
This time is much more better to me from Russia.
All right. And I'm imagining that the folks in Asia are already not able to make this call. And so I think that everybody who could possibly make this call is on Pacific time or later, in other words, east of California. So I think that it should be okay to move this to 9 o'clock Pacific time. Are there any objections or comments on that?
I'm not.
Okay, cool. Then let's plan to have the next one, which is at this time, which will be in 3 months. So it'll be like in January or the end of December or something. Will be at 9 o'clock Pacific, 2 hours earlier than we had this meeting. Yeah, only once every 3 months. Cool. Those are all the topics on the agenda. We have 7 minutes to spare per early meeting rules, or 17 if we go all the way to the end of the hour. Are there anything else that folks would like to discuss or questions? The Developer Summit will be recorded and live streamed as well. So for folks who can't be here in person, we'll have the live stream. I think we're using the same service as we did last time. Michael asked, are there any latest OpenZFS release RPMs for CentOS 8? By latest release, do you mean 0.8 something, or do you mean master?
That would simply be 0.8 something
Okay.
as of the last official release.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Anyone?
Is it problem try to build some RPMs from source?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I know that you can run make RPMs and it'll build it from source. I don't know if Red Hat, I mean, I don't think Red Hat does, but I don't know if anybody maintains those for easy download.
Okay, I'll try building it. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, you can try building it. You can also try asking on the mailing list. There might be more folks who know about more.
I thought there was actually something on the ZOL wiki.
The wiki has older builds, and it's not super clear for the latest.
Okay. Yeah, because I thought I seem to recall that like they tried to build like certain packages and kind of store them there, but maybe they're not keeping up to date.
That's my impression.
Right.
Who would be the one to talk to? Brian or otherwise?
I mean, Brian might or might not know. You might try on the ZFS on Linux mailing list because there's just so many people that are using ZFS on Linux there. I'm sure that there's somebody who's like, you know, using exactly the same release
Totally.
that you are and that has, you know, wanted to run master or the latest 0.8, and they can tell you like, oh yeah, I built it from RPMs. Here's the commands that you need. Or Oh, download it from some random dude's website.
Bingo. Okay, cool. Thank you. That's all.
Yeah, there were a few comments on the chat as well that you might want to check. Gordon said about xattrs. It's not just xattrs, it's also ACLs and DOS style attribute bits. Because those are those not stored in a platform agnostic way, the ACLs and the attribute bits?
They are, but what we've identified as we survey the various implementations, if our goal is to, or maybe this is a false alarm, but I think we agree that our goal is to try to make pools transportable as much as possible without losing data.
Yep.
Now, because systems vary in all of these areas, you may lose some or any of these things. It's just, it came up while we're looking at what are the various things that the systems treat differently, and all the systems, many of the systems we look at treat various of these things differently.
So is it that they, I think, well, let's see. My question is, so for, let's say, DOS style attribute bits, for example, is the issue that that some platforms don't support those attribute bits? So like you take a pool from Illumos where you can set them and observe them and all that stuff. You take it to another platform and then it just ignores that DOS attribute bits. Or is it the case that like I set them on Illumos and I take it to FreeBSD, and FreeBSD supports DOS style attributes and you can set and get DOS style attributes on FreeBSD, but it's storing them in ZFS in some way that's not the same way as Illumos. And so, you know, it says, yes, I know about DOS style attributes, but there are none set here, even though they were set correctly on Illumos.
Yeah, it's mostly that the some of the platforms ignore them. So I'm trying to be cautious about pointing fingers of blame about who's throwing away information where at this point, and just trying to document what we have. But yep. I just wanted to give people a heads up that this stuff is also relevant, yeah, particularly the ACLs case.
Yeah, I think that it would be definitely good to have that documented. I mean, I would say that, you know, if you're taking a pool from Illumos, which supports ACLs, to some other operating system that doesn't support ZFS ACLs, doesn't read them, doesn't display them, and it's then ignoring the ACLs that are there, that's like, it's a missing feature, but it's not that like anybody has done anything wrong, right? Like it could be a more complete and more integrated solution on that platform, but it's just work that hasn't been done yet, as opposed to like, you know, we disagreed about how to store the ACLs, and so you can see a different set of ACLs on two different systems. Like to me, that would be like wrong, because we've decided, you know, two platforms have decided to store the ACLs in two different incompatible ways, where really they should have used the same way. It sounds like we're not in that situation as far as ACLs and the DOS attribute bits, as far as we know yet.
On the OpenZFS feature matrix spreadsheet, there is an ACL already listed there. So I'm wondering if that is the place you want to document some of that missing compatibility.
Thanks for reminding about that. Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, maybe we don't have to worry about this if as Matt describes, it's just kind of this platform ignores it. That's not so bad as, anyway, they do seem relevant to me from the standpoint of data pool transportability, but having different severity of problems.
Yeah. Right. Yep. Cool. Any last topics? All right, then I will see hopefully many of you in 3 weeks, and then the next meeting will be 4 weeks from today, which is the week after the Developer Summit. And that will be at the later time, 1 p.m. Pacific. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.